A big aloha. This is Maui Real Estate Radio with your host, Clint Hanson. Aloha, Clint.
Aloha, Cindy. It's a pleasure to see you.
Good to see you, too. You have a great website. Actually, you have two great websites. You have a gift for good websites.
I have dozens of great websites. It's a network. You know, that's one of the reasons people love using our website is the fact that we pull from a variety of information sources. We even have real estate agents that end up using our website instead of the MLS because it's so easy to just instantly bridge over to county resources and tax records and things of that nature. But yeah,
that's MauiRealestate.net.
That's right, MauiRealestate.net. It pulls
Great
from
site.
a lot of different places. In addition to that, we have MauiRealEstateRadio.com, which today we're broadcasting at 11:10 a.m., 98.7 FM, and 96.7 FM, the KAOI radio group. Thank you for having me, Cindy.
It's always a pleasure. I always learn something from the show. I do. I learn something new every time, and I love that. I really love learning things. And you have a guest in the studio today.
Yeah, we have Cassandra. She's here today. She's the executive director and principal broker for Nahali o Maui. Say hello.
Hi there. How are you?
Wonderful. Today we're here to talk a little bit about one of the lesser known types of property, and that's leasehold. But I wanted to talk about my favorite part of leasehold, which is Nahali o Maui. They were originally started back not too long ago. What was it, like 10 years ago, or was it 15?
2006.
Oh, 2006.
Yes.
And John Anderson, actually my dad, Bob Hanson, and who was the other guy? Geez.
You know, there are so many people involved.
Yeah.
It really was a grassroots effort.
It was, yeah. And Bob was one of the original person to put in the seed money to allow for the initial purchases. And, you know, they did some initial bank purchases. And it's a shared ownership that they have to help teach people in that affordability to put it in their grasp. Because, you know, there's a lot of different programs available, but this is definitely one of my favorite. I think it's, just correct me if I'm wrong, I think it's about 60% of the people, you know, go out of this leasehold form of ownership, this like training grounds for a home, and then they convert to the open market, more fee simple style ownership where they have a bigger stake in the property. You know, obviously they have more fees, but they go through that and they're really ready to dive into it. You want to tell us a little bit about what your services offer today?
Okay, great. And you're right, we are leasehold, but we consider ourselves a sustainable leasehold as opposed to the typical leasehold we saw with the big estates on Oahu.
Because they're in perpetuity instead, right?
That's right. Plus, our whole focus is on our homeowners, not in raising funds for other programs.
Precisely.
So the first thing we do is we separate the property, the land, from the house, and we hold the land in trust in perpetuity forever.
All right.
And then we reduce the price of the home significantly because of that, and we will even further reduce it if it's possible. For instance, a recent house that we sold in Kehalani, we had an appraisal of almost $700,000 on it.
Yeah.
We bought it for $475,000, put almost $60,000 into it because it was a foreclosure home, and I think the homeowners were not happy when they left.
Yeah, I would imagine.
Right. And we sold the home to a local family. The husband works for the county of Maui.
All right.
We sold it at $385,000.
Oh, it's beautiful.
That is truly affordable.
Yeah, and it's one of the rarest things to have on Maui is
Yes.
affordable property. So it's nice to have programs like these that are available and help teach people about ownership. And, you know, and I hear you mention it's a local family, but there is definitely a line that you want to draw between this kind of leasehold and the other type of leasehold in perpetuity, which is the Department of Hawaiian Homeland.
Yes.
DHHL has, you know, for people of Native Hawaiian ancestry, 50% or more, they can, you know, qualify to purchase. And of course, there's
With blood quantum.
yeah, with
50%
blood
or
quantum,
more,
correct.
yes.
And which their heirs are able to inherit the property as long as they have 25% or more, which is, fantastic. It can be, sometimes
Yes.
a trying situations if there's divorce or whatnot, because, let's say the opposite member can't
Right.
take on the property. But in this case, there's none of those kinds of clouds or issues associated with it. So it
Correct.
puts that affordability in anybody's hands that is a resident of Maui. And can you tell us a little bit about the program? Let's just say I'm somebody and I want to be a homeowner. I'm gotten a stable job, or maybe even I'm in between, but I'm ready to make the jump and have a life where my family has roots, where we get a dog and, the whole 9 yards, the picket fence, and we
Yes.
approach Nahaleo Maui. What would be the first step?
Well, we do have a 4-step process. And the first is a quarterly seminar that we hold, no charge, to come in and find out about our program. It is leasehold, so that means it's not for everyone. There are families that feel it's very important to own the land also, so this program is not for them. If they decide that, yes, they do want to pursue our program, then they need to get a pre-qualification letter from a lender of their choice. And then they take an 8-hour HUD-approved program that helps them with financing, cleaning up their credit. Many of us don't know a lot about credit ahead of time, and that's what takes us a long time to get prepared for home ownership. So this allows them to do that and also learn about maintaining their home. The last thing they do is they come into our offices and meet with our housing coordinator, and we go through the ground lease almost page by page, so they truly understand what is involved in the ground lease, because it is different. And once they've done those 4 steps, then they are placed on our qualified buyer list. And when we do have a house that's available for sale, we let everybody on the buyer list know about it.
Take a crack at it.
That's right. So now, if I want to live, let's say, in upcountry, and the house that's available is in Kihei, I will decide on my own. I'm not really interested, so I won't show up. So it doesn't really matter how big our list is. Only the people that are interested in that district or that area will come in and take a look at it. They can come in and walk through the house and then decide whether they do want to pursue it. If that's the case, then they do need to get a qualification letter at that time from their lender based on the sale price.
Okay.
And then we have a process where board members do a blind selection process. So they
very
don't
nice.
know who the buyers are. They only know certain data or statistics about them.
Okay.
And then they make the decision and they select a buyer and then a backup buyer.
Is there any restrictions associated with the purchase of the property? Like, do they
Yes.
have to have lived on Maui for like 8 years or something along
No.
those lines?
No time in terms of being a resident. Most of our home buyers are, but you have to be income qualified. So our buyers essentially start at about 80% of the area median income, and they can, when we get funding, those funders determine what the range is. So, for instance, if we get county money from the Affordable Housing Fund, then it's 80 to 120% of AMI. But because of the high cost of living and the high cost of housing on Maui, we have from the IRS determination letter, we can go up to 140% of AMI.
That's impressive.
But generally, that's only on houses where it's funded internally. If it's from the county, like I said, it's usually capped at 120% of AMI.
Where's your general sources of housing? I mean, is it from individual purchases or from direct from banks? I mean, I'm assuming that there's certain qualifiers in there that, incentivize probably bulk purchases from you guys, right? At least, I know in the beginning, 2006 was rolling around. It was a perfect opportunity to acquire many of these homes. And I was always curious to see, hey, how's the program continuing? I like to see that, and it's a wonderful learning experience. So I've been curious.
Sure. Real estate, the market cycles and changes. So when we first started at Nahaleo Maui, we thought we would do development, we'd be building our own homes. And that's just about the time that we started sliding into the Great Recession.
Yeah.
Well, we took a look around, and as realtors, you know that it's basically opportunistic. We started looking at foreclosures. So foreclosures where the houses had been abandoned. Many of them had been empty for so long that they had pulled the water meters. So, things like that. So most of our homes came there. So about 32 or 33 of the homes. Then we had acquired a lot through foreclosure up in Waikapū, and we built the first home for the organization there from the ground up. So now foreclosures have gotten so expensive.
And they're so thin.
Yes, and we just can't afford it. It's just too rich for us to be able to manage that. So we have shifted, and West Maui Land did a development out in Kahoma, 68 lots. They sold 10 of those lots to Habitat and 12 to Nahaleo Maui at an incredibly low price, I think even lower than what it cost them to develop those lots, actually, given the time that it took them. So now we're going to build 12 homes.
Yep.
And we're almost ready to do that. We have a loan. We have a contractor. We're just waiting for the bond, and we're going to start.
What an incredible, that's wonderful to hear. You guys are actually starting to build your own properties after all these. This must have been a long time coming. How long have you owned the land?
Well, not that long. There was a lawsuit against the LUC when it was going through 201H, which is the state streamlining process. And you can't get clear title insurance. So we actually renewed the contract 3 times before we were able to close. So we closed in 2017, I believe.
And the entitlement is one of the big expenses associated with purchasing here on Maui. I mean,
Yes.
people are always wondering why our prices are so high. It's not just supply and demand.
No.
Creating new inventory is very difficult. I believe it's almost like 24 or 25 cents of every dollar ends up coming directly to the cost of building from those entitlement processes.
That's right. And it can take you over 10 years to get those entitlements. And you really have to have staying power.
And 10 years is
Can you
conservative.
explain what entitlements is? I really don't know anything about that.
So entitlements is just the rights associated with the property or what you're entitled to do. So say, for example, you have some condominium zoned land and you're able to build a 6-unit structure with 2 bedrooms on each one of them. So that's the entitlement for it. Sometimes you get just raw land. That's one type of zoning. So you want to entitle it to another one. So say you want to go from R1 to R3, increase the density or something along those lines. That's basically what we mean by entitlement.
And when you're talking about development, you're generally talking about the big change from agricultural land to residential. And that's what takes so very long to get through.
Is that permitting?
There's permitting involved, but first you have to get the entitlements themselves, the right to change the zoning.
And who decides that?
That would be the
Many
Land Use
people.
Commission would be the main,
It depends on the size of the subdivision. So on smaller parcels, I believe it's 15 acres or less.
Yes, correct.
You don't have to. But when you go over that amount, then you have to go to the LUC, the Land Use Commission. And then you can use the state streamlining or the county streamlining process to try and get through some of those. Some of the exactions would be waived under that process also. Then once you get the approval, you have to go to the county council and go through their process. And then once you have all of those approvals, if you're still alive, then you do go through the permitting process to actually get your permits to build. And you also have to do all the site work, the utilities, the roadways, the everything, sidewalks, curbs, gutters. Yes.
So now that the LUC issue is settled, how long do you think you are until you break ground on your first development?
Yes, that is interesting question. It depends, like most things in life.
Absolutely. We'll see.
Does it help to have a lawyer or someone?
It's essential. A team
It
of
is
lawyers.
essential, really? Okay.
Yes, good lawyers.
Mm-hmm.
Yes, they can help or not. But yes, they are always involved.
And even when things are approved, you can still run into hiccups.
Yes.
Oftentimes if somebody wants to subdivide a chunk of property, say, for example, you have to go and meet the minimum requirements or the new requirements for that area. Say, for example, you have a 5-acre property in Haiku and you want to subdivide it into 2.5 acre lots. Well, do you have water for it? You need to meet, the water bill. And that can be one set of issues. The second one is fire water retention. You either have a standpipe. If you don't have a standpipe, you're in a rural community. Maybe they're going to want you to have a 25,000 gallon tank in place in addition to your water requirement.
Yes.
So there is a whole series of hurdles that you have to jump through in order to get stuff done.
Yes.
And it just really depends on your zoning. Agricultural is completely different from rural, and there's a lot of opportunities out there to increase the density of homes. I mean, they just recently changed the rules. So if you have 7,500 square feet or more, as opposed to having just one ohana in a main home, you can actually have 2 separate ohanas. So that's a really big plus. It helps increase our density and hopefully alleviate some of the but that's going to be a long time because people have to permit it or, do after the fact, because a lot of people have those second dwellings anyway, and they want to make them legal now that the opportunity's there.
And so you have to be prepared for a long haul.
And even on the ohanas that are now possible, there's a hiccup in that also because there are state requirements that may prevent your being able to do it. So there's always a change. But what I did want to mention, though, is when it comes to affordable housing, we've all heard horror stories about how long it takes to get permits. And I know of people that have waited over a year to get permits to build residential properties. The county and the permitting department has been incredibly fast for affordable housing.
Yes.
I'm just surprised how quickly we got through with our permits.
It's a priority.
So we registered our plans. We have 3 models. So that means that in the future, we can take those models and they're already pre-registered. We can go ahead and build them on other properties and it'll shortcut the time there. One house, the roof line was different, so we went through the normal process. It was just as quick. They have been incredibly good to affordable housing.
That's beautiful.
Yeah.
I'm always interested to hear about other build processes. People talking about incorporating tiny homes for homeless, and then that's actually, they've done that in other states. It really does come down to the zoning and allowability and a lot of, not in my backyard situations. And we are here on Maui trying to get through and alleviate the concerns and congestions associated with people's first home or just a place to live. And it's a process that we're all working together with, and the county has been instrumental to make those changes that are necessary. But it is, just general permitting can take time. It's normally about 2 to 3 months in the mainland, and here it can be, 8 months to a year. It's just the cycle. We have much more restrictive code comparative to other places, even in Hawaii, because we don't just have the state code. We also have our Maui County code, which is, makes it difficult. It's these 2 giant books. I had to work on it. I actually own the paintball field out there in Olowalu. So since I'm on agricultural land, I had a whole, I think it was about 50 different government, state, federal regulations to go through and studies. So I had to do a flora and fauna count. I had to label all the Hawaiian ancestral grounds and spiritual locations and lookouts. Fortunately, or unfortunately, depending on what perspective you're looking at, it used to be tilled. It used to be sugarcane. So there's really, it would be impossible to have anything there that hadn't been dramatically disturbed over the years. So there was traffic counts, impact to the area, water assessment, water usage, wastewater treatment, and that's going to happen for everything, not just, doing a commercial use on agricultural land. There's rules and differences depending on what activity you want to do. If it's considered like an ag tour, say you're going to do horseback riding or something like that. Each situation has a different set of rules, and there's different people, planners and permitters that you can work through. Even if you wanted to do a bed and breakfast license, or if you wanted to do something as crazy as trying to start a paintball field. It took me years to do, and the only reason I did it was because it's a passion of mine. So.
But how many years, really? About 5, 6 years?
Well, finding the land alone was about 3 years. Somebody that was willing to agree. And A&B was, I would go there to board meetings, and I would just basically sit in the hall and nothing would happen. And then West Maui Land was nice enough to, sit down and talk with them. And it was probably about a 20-minute conversation. That was after years and years of going on. I had my plan all set out. They agreed, got a lease, and we actually just recently renegotiated. And, they like having us out there. We help stop a couple of the fires from progressing and being an issue, which is really nice. But it was kind of terrifying simultaneously.
Yeah.
So, I used Rory Frampton when I was going through and getting my special use permit, and he's available for hire from individuals. There's a variety of planners that you can work through, but the county uses Rory on a lot of different things from
That's important,
traffic flow,
isn't it?
Yeah.
And he can expedite your processing.
That's an important thing. Do a lot of people just give up when they start to see all the hoops and bars you have to jump over? Is it
Depends on what you're doing. Yeah,
Yeah.
it really does. I mean, I think one of the big things that people talk to me on a regular basis is about starting a wedding location. Now we're getting a little off topic.
No, but it's
it is. There's every sense or use. There's a typical set of rules that you have to follow by, and there's a current allowable. Like if you want to do a wedding once every couple of months, not going to really have an issue. If you're going to be doing daily or multiple events, that's going to be a lot more on the commercial side of things. So, and I always recommend talking to a planner and an attorney to make sure that all the T's are crossed, all the I's are dotted. But back to the affordable housing, I wanted to congratulate you. It's glad to hear that you're along the path to starting the first development. I didn't even know. How many homes do you guys have right now?
We have 34. And we're going to close on the 35th, hopefully by the end of this month.
Oh,
with
congratulations.
A new homeowner. Yeah, and then we'll have the 12 more out there in Lahaina.
So, again, that's Nahali o Maui. Would you recommend them going to your website to kind of talk to you first and signing up for the program?
Absolutely, and they can sign up for our seminar there on the website. We haven't scheduled the next one because we just had the last one. But there's lots of information there, and it's www.nahaleomaui.org.
All right. So is there any other affordable things that you actually wanted to talk about today, or any other programs that you're excited about beyond Nahali o Maui?
There are a number of programs, actually bills in the legislature right now that have funding for affordable housing. And we actually have a bill in the legislature to make funds available managed by HHFDC that would allow nonprofits to borrow money at a more reasonable rate than commercial banks. So we're hoping that that is settled in committee also. They put a date and an amount into it. So we've been busy. I've also been helping organizations on the Big Island and Kauai and even Oahu to look at and perhaps form community land trusts like we are. And we have one new one down on the Big Island now. I believe they're forming in Kauai. And I went down last year at the invitation of the planning department on the Big Island to talk about community land trusts. And they're looking at how they can create housing for a lot of the people that were displaced by the volcanic activity.
Oh, good point. And that'd be another place where those small homes you were talking about.
Yes.
Yeah, they do actually have some emergency shelters that they've been bringing over from Japan, what I understand. And that's one of the things that they're talking about here. Obviously, there's their own hurdles associated with permitting, licensing, and making sure it's safe for the occupants inside. That is one of the things, single wall construction is not necessarily a allowable buildable, allowable
doesn't
use.
meet code.
Yeah, it doesn't meet current code. So having exceptions to the rule is a hard thing, because it's like leaving an exception, why not everybody? How you don't want to have special dispensation for people. So having a middle ground that shows a property is really secure, properly insulated, meets energy requirements, that single level requires a whole team of engineers and people agreeing and board. So we're a long way off, but it's happening, and
you need
we're getting
water.
closer. Water, of course.
and wastewater.
So then when FEMA does those trailers or has done in the past trailers and things such as that, is that under a whole separate category that's easier and that's why they use trailers?
Yeah,
cetera?
those
Yes.
are all double wall construction, and they
Oh,
can
really?
meet current hurricane tie down standards because they come up and drive the peg next to it and put it into the ground. Even though Maui is one of the few islands that's relatively protected from hurricanes, they still have to meet all the requirements.
Can I just ask a question? Because I really don't know the answer. What qualifies you as low income to purchase low income housing? What's the price range?
The Department of Housing and Urban
Development.
HUD development,
HUD.
yes. They look at census data, and they look at other studies they do intermediately, and they determine what the income ranges are for low income, moderate income, above average income. And they also set the prices on the sale of the houses. They also have guidelines for rentals, and they're adjusted by the number of people in your family. So it's difficult for me to say, what the income range is. It depends.
Right,
We
goes to
have
the family
families with
income.
6, we have families with 3, and they can be in the same income range, but the requirement or the maximum is different.
It is typically higher here in Maui compared to anywhere else. I think the average last I checked was about 87,000 of gross household income to be a medium. But that does depend on regionally where you're located, and they meet
That's
those
total
requirements.
family.
That's,
yeah.
family income, and that's probably
That's
a household of 4.
Household of 4.
Oh.
Yeah,
So a single person wouldn't have
No.
that cap of
Be like half
187. Got it. Interesting.
Right.
Okay.
And we do look at total family income when we qualify people.
Fantastic.
So,
yeah.
Because that really changes the whole picture, and it puts you in a different status then.
Yes.
So if you have to say half of that, $45,000 a year for maybe a single
Right,
person or a
right.
couple, you could do a little more.
And the problem is that the median income family in Maui County can't qualify for a median price house in the open market.
Absolutely. Yeah.
And that's why entities like Nahaleo Maui or Habitat for Humanity or Lokahi Pacific, that's where we come in and we can help the developer who has been mandated to provide housing in certain income categories that they basically can't do and break even. So
They
they
can
can
go
have
to, like-
nonprofits come in and fill that part of the project.
And is there a general fund, from what I understand, that sometimes they pay into? They can,
Yes.
put that money forward to help you guys acquire more properties to help their.
Correct. You can pay in lieu of
Yes.
meeting your affordable housing requirements. You can, do it in kind. And many of them make lots available to us. At this point, we either purchase them or they are, granted to us.
And did you hear about the affordable development that they were trying in North Kihei? I actually believe they had some county funds available for that. But
Is that Ray Phillips?
I
project?
think, yeah, the one
Yeah.
that's near the church there, or just up to the right.
It's off of Ohukai?
Yeah, off of
Oh,
Ohukai.
yeah, I
But-
saw Ray's. He's used to be on our board. He's terrific. I mean, they're going to come up with a wonderful project with, affordable prices.
Yep, they do have a temporary injunction, from what I understand. Though I think a couple of people went forward, and that is, of course, one of the hurdles that everybody has to overcome
Yeah.
here. Is it's not in my backyard. As soon as somebody
Exactly.
gets on feet on the ground, they don't want anything else to happen. Even though it
Yeah.
might have been slated or approved or whatnot.
And sometimes it's even people that were able to buy affordable housing in the past.
Yep.
And then they want their cost of their home to go up in value, so they don't want
Right,
other homes
right.
that they think will bring down the value of the house in the neighborhood.
It's
not
hard to
just
know
that,
exactly,
though.
yes.
Sometimes they just don't want the noise of construction in
Yes.
their backyard.
Oh, really?
Yep.
Oh, I hadn't even considered
Mm,
that.
Usually when something gets built, comparative, the known is better than the unknown. So when something gets
Right.
developed next door, it's actually normally a net benefit for the neighborhood because it's
Yes.
done. It sees that there's new property. When those homes sell at a higher value, they typically bring up their neighbors around them and create a better sense of community. But that's not normally the motivation for people to, put their foot in the door to stop the process. It's very individualistic, and we have processes to appeal here, and I think those are very important, but at the same time they can be a hindrance and slow down the cogs.
Yes, absolutely.
When you see large land, A and B, et cetera, big land masses come available, do your eyes go, and you go, oh, maybe there's opportunity here. There's some building that could go on for low-income housing that could happen on some of that land, and you're shaking your head no.
We're thinking, everybody's thinking much too small. It's so hard to get the little things done that it's impossible to do the big things. I think the last big project that was considered was West Maui land developing Olowalu. And when they went to try to go for that project, they actually went through the entire process. They appealed to all the neighbors. They sent out letters in the newspaper. They had forums. It took them decades and millions of dollars to come up with that entire town project, to divert traffic and the whole 9 yards. And then they went through to the final hurdle of the process. They really weren't expecting to get a whole lot of resistance because they had so many forums and discussions and, beforehand, and that was open to the public. And then you had over 100 people show up that were very angry about the idea, even though the mass majority of the community was behind it.
Yes.
It ended up not going through because of a couple of issues. I'm for it. I think it's something that needs to happen.
Yep.
I'm really glad that it didn't because, my paintball field gets to stay up. But at the same time, it's so desperately needed. I mean, we're at a shortfall of over 10,000 homes.
Yes.
It's 10 to 15,000 homes with a demand that's increasing about 1,000 homes a year. And it's really the kids of the future and the families of the future that are suffering and the average price goes up. And, people are coming in and purchasing second homes and just the general cost of property going up here. So unless we can meet that ground level supply and have opportunities like Nahale o Maui and some of these affordable developments come up, we're going to just keep hitting our head against the wall.
If you're just tuning in, this is Maui Real Estate Radio with your host Clint Hanson, and he's part of the Hanson Ohana. I've been part of real estate on Maui for decades.
Yeah. No, I've had my license 17 years.
But your family.
Yes, with
decades,
my family. My dad has had his license for 36 years. My mom's had hers for over 40. We started our website, MauiRealEstate.net, which is the go-to website for everybody on Maui, including a lot of agents, to research information about properties and get tax info. And it's really just easy process that we don't, require people to sign in. A lot of people are there just checking out our webcam because we got a webcam on Charlie Young Beach that's been there since like 99.
Well, the thing is, for people who don't understand the process, and this is what I'm getting from listening to you who do understand it, it's so important to be able to have a resource of people that can really know and tell you and educate you what you have to know and get through to actually get to that point, whether it's affordable housing or buying a home. There's a lot of things you would not know if you think you can just buy a lot and build or subdivide. If you see a 4-acre parcel and think, oh, we'll just subdivide and then we can have 2 homes, and that's a natural thing to think, but it's not always that way.
No, and it's a rare opportunity where something's ready to go, the entitlement's in place, and there's really no more hotel zone land, I mean, they're out there, but people are holding on to it, and there's apartment zone land or affordable are already in process and, been slated to be developed for decades. There's really not a big change and process that people are willing to take the time, money, and effort to go through because it's just generally easier. If you want to make money, you'd go to the mainland and do a project there. Most of the people that are developing here are for lack of a better word, hard-headed fools that are looking to benefit Maui. They want to get...
Is that you?
They're looking to help the future. There's a lot of opportunities out there to make a lot of money. And, if you're doing a big project on Maui, you certainly, there's margins there, but it's typically not as profitable as doing something somewhere else. So, it's the more expensive developments are often a means to allow the affordable ones to even happen.
That's a good point.
That's why it was kind of a surprise when, you have such an high density, project with phenomenal infrastructure like small town Olowalu that would go in that has
was the
strong...
Frampton Ward project?
Actually, no,
That's
it was
Andrew.
not. Yeah. Anderson, yeah, correct. And I think they did some small permitting long ago, but that had nothing to do with that project. And the process that they went through was all legal and had big community support, and then all of a sudden that last minute to come through was a pretty big surprise, and that just, it sours a lot of people's
And it can't be appealed.
experience.
And once it's decided, it's decided.
Well, we'll see. They have to go through the process and start from square one, basically.
Wow.
So, and that was millions of dollars to get to that point.
That was the Old Willow project, but
Yeah.
the Waikapu
Oh, and
country
Waikapu,
town
too.
is
Also.
has a lot of support, and
Yep.
it seems to be moving through, and they've gotten unanimous decisions from the LUC, and they're very involved with the community, having hearings, listening to people, and they're still working on it, but it's such a complex, dynamic issue to get through all of that, and it takes developers, like you say, maybe it's hard-headed, maybe they're just total optimists.
Optimists,
I don't know what, or maybe there's a combination of the two. But you have to have a partnership, really, is what it is, because if it takes a village to raise a child, I mean, it takes a community to get housing out there so that we can raise our children in those houses. The county's involved too, and the county is changing. They really are working on their policies, their procedures, and I think that we're making progress, and we're focused on a goal of providing more housing for our workforce. If we want our workforce to be here, we have to be able to house them. There was just a survey that was done, and they determined that 45% of the voting people here in Hawaii, 45% of them had already either left the state or were seriously considering leaving the state because of the high cost of living, and the biggest chunk of that is housing. If we want them to stay here, we need to find housing, a way to deliver that. So that they
isn't
can.
it true that there's more Native Hawaiians in Vegas than there are in all of Hawaii?
I don't know if it's Vegas, but outside of Hawaii, I believe they outnumber.
Yeah.
In Hawaii.
And it's because there's no opportunities to be here.
No.
The cost of living goes up so dramatically, and there's no opportunities. People end up making the decision to leave, and like I told you in the last few episodes, that the population of Maui's actually dropped consecutively year after year for these last 2 years.
Well, it didn't used to exist, and in some places still, where if you had a large hotel or a large employer, they would actually try to include housing as part of the opportunity to get people to be able to do that. Of course, there's an issue with doctors, et cetera, et cetera. But this is almost something that has to be thought of if you're going to have a large business and employ people.
And they do. I mean,
Yes.
I've talked to several board members with the hospital. I've and it does make sense. And they usually go through and they try to work and set up these collaborative relationships with management companies and whatnot. So when they come in, they have a place for doctors, because we are at a massive shortfall for nurses and doctors. They are trying to cut out the traveling nurse program so that they can specifically support local nurses that live here. But, again, those nurses get the education here, and oftentimes are going to the mainland where they can be paid the same amount, more, or potentially more, and then live at a dramatically reduced cost, for both cost of living, whether
of gas,
you be any
food.
number of things. It is that price of paradise. So, it does take a collaborative effort on a lot of municipalities, but mainly it's right now just up to the individual business, like the hospital. I've talked to them. I said, really what you should do is acquire one of these larger chunks of land and look to create a community based around, doctors and nurses that all live in the same place, because it works on a business sense too, because you're keeping your talent and together, and you're creating and fostering long-term relationships with your employees. So if you create these micro communities based around a particular, vocation, you're going to create a better sense of community. I mean, it's actually, you're seeing it a lot in areas like
Maui, Lani, and
Silicon Valley is a good example.
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
They're creating massive campuses where people live, work. It's a strategic advantage so that they don't have to deal with the commute. It's a strategic advantage because then they don't have to worry about corporate espionage as much because they can keep a tighter hold of the situation in their community.
Interesting.
Of course, that is a bit different for here in Maui. The hotel industry has its own set of problems and issues that they're dealing with. It would make sense, though, because those costs are very real, and they pay typically a higher rate for these rents compared to if they were going to own something themselves. But it takes initial capital and time, and most people don't want to think out of the box, as such as building a community. And it is not going to be any easier for them to build a development as it would be a developer themselves. I mean, maybe if the nurses were to come together and doctors and specifically approach the county and say, hey, look, we have a shortfall. You want good medical coverage? We need to build this development so we can get these needed doctors and staff in place. It might go a little bit faster, but it's going to be the same hurdles that we're uncovering for the affordable housing.
And the truth of the matter is that housing is such a complex issue, like we've brushed upon today. You cannot fix one narrow segment of the market. You need to have housing all the way across the market, including on the high end for doctors and people to come in, because otherwise we have this problem with no doctors. You cannot only focus on one particular area because that's not going to fix it.
Yep, absolutely. I don't know how we're going to build 10,000 homes, though.
Well, it's one of the biggest
challenge.
issues on Maui, isn't it? It's really one of the biggest problems and biggest issues that you're dealing with here, right? Isn't that what people found in the last elections? One of the things they were most concerned about?
I mean, everybody knows the solution is higher density areas, apartments and complexes, but nobody wants them built. So.
No, most people on Maui are afraid that we will turn into Oahu.
Yeah, precisely.
If we allow the higher density.
How do you answer that when people, and sometimes it's unspoken because they won't say it, that's their secret fear, that they don't want more traffic, they don't want more people. But it's necessary, obviously, and people say it's the biggest problem. So how do you try to address that? Is it education? Is it more community meetings? How do you answer that?
This is actually a perfect example. Nahale o Maui is a great opportunity for people to live and work in Maui, and it's, like you said, you have these blind studies for people and some basic statistics associated with them to help, determine who should be purchasing the property at a reduced rate. It's shared income, not shared income, but shared equity between, both the home purchaser as well as Nahale o Maui. So I know that there's a lot of leasehold lands associated, especially in Lahaina, where the cost of land is the cost of housing is almost $100,000 higher there than anywhere else in anywhere else in Maui.
Really?
Yes. So
I was not aware of that.
Well, a lot of people are commuting out there on a regular basis.
Wow.
They're
$100,000 more.
Yeah, for a home, typically you're looking at that higher price. But the funny thing is, if you compare that to the high-end property, there tends to be a little bit more of a discount, comparatively to the south side of the island. Which I do find that funny that, the low price point is smashed up so much closer to the high end than it is in central Maui. There's a bigger disparity between the low end property and high end, and South Maui. So it is interesting. I haven't really dived into the statistics of why, but I think the main thing is just the supply associated with it and the location. People are commuting out there, and why would you want to spend 2 hours every single day driving out there when you could live and work in the same place? I mean, 2 hours of driving a day comes out to a work week worth of driving every month. So, you want to spend a whole extra week of working per month.
Gas. I mean, there is that price, and gas is going up, and you have that issue, and you just pray there's not an accident.
And the county actually is working for live-work communities, and that's one of the things at Small Town Olawalu. And what was the other one that they're working on?
Well, actually, the project that we're
in,
right, Kahoma Homes, that is geared primarily to people who either work or live on the west end of Maui.
Yep.
And that will cut out the commute. If everybody that worked in West Maui were able to live there, just think of what would happen to the rush hour we wouldn't see anymore.
It
Going
would
over the
alleviate a
Poly.
large property congestion. I mean, and the funny thing is, if you reduce congestion by just 3 or 4%, even just 1%, it dramatically changes the traffic flow.
Yes.
You look at these studies, and just small number changes can really drastically change the amount of time it takes to drive from one side to the other. So creating more communities that are specifically focused on, people who live and work in the same area is going to do the best to benefit Maui.
Right. Instead of having people that live in upcountry Maui that are working out in Lahaina, you'd move them to Lahaina so they wouldn't have to deal with that.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for coming in, Cassandra. I really appreciate it. I wanted to talk a little bit more about a few other leasehold properties. We got about 10 minutes remaining in the show, so I wanted to be working on that.
Thank you very much. It was a pleasure to be here, and thank you for asking about Nahaleo Maui.
And again, the website for people to find out more is?
www.nahaleomaui.org.
Thank you so much.
Aloha.
Really interesting. Thank you so much.
So another part, leasehold is an animal, and there's so many different facets to it. It really depends. It's really a written contract and an agreement between the landowner and the person who is leasing the property. So, you're not necessarily purchasing the land. You're purchasing the right to lease the land. Of course, it's different with Nahaleo Maui. It's different with DHHL, Department of Hawaiian Homelands. Department of Homelands, let's talk about that. There's very little opportunity. They do have regular lots that they release, and that if you have to have the blood quantum of and trace your lineage to the 50% or more. And one of the things to be aware of is, let's say you have 50%, while your heirs, if they're 25%, say you're marrying somebody who doesn't have Native Hawaiian ancestry, your kids, of course, are going to be 25%. Your children actually would still be able to inherit it, even though they aren't able to purchase the land. Of course, thereafter, it has the minimum 25%. So,
But there's a long wait, isn't there, for those?
There is, that's again, a lot of the people and the natives of Hawaii have been moving off island because there's other opportunities elsewhere. I mean, there hopefully would be more opportunities out there in the future when Hawaii was overturned or overthrown, and there were actually ceded lands put aside for people of Native Hawaiian ancestry, but it's still a process. They still have to meet county requirements. They still have to go and get approvals. So they have the same hurdles with less emphasis, or not less emphasis, less incentive to do it. It's a financially tighter target to hit. Now, if you are interested in Hawaiian homelands, there is actually one home that I noticed in central Maui that's for sale. It seemed a little higher than average. It was, about $150,000 cheaper, but typically it's about $200,000 less than market value. This one is a 4-bedroom, 2.5 bath. That's 1,700 square feet. It's only been on the market 26 days, but normally they're sold in, 5 or 6 days. So it's important to, contact an agent, get set up on a mailing list so you're the very first, get all pre-qualified to do the purchase. And it's listed at $540,000. I felt that was a little bit high. Usually it's under $500,000 for something about equal size.
But it's a big home.
Yep, absolutely. And if you wanted to get qualified for the DHHL, Department of Hawaiian Homelands, I would recommend giving the Maui office a call directly. That's 760-5120. That's 808-760-5120. Or you could go here. They're actually right here in Wailuku, 655 Kua Mali'i, and that's Kaumulii. You can just go up there and stop by and go through the paperwork process, and it is definitely a process to go through, but 100% worth it.
Yeah, absolutely.
And of course, that's completely different than most of the leasehold properties that are out here. one of the ones that's actually a big concern associated with people who are purchasing leasehold property is that this reversionary clause that's in a lot of the properties. Aleloa, which is a property located on the west side, was one of the newest ones that were coming up. Now, a lot of these properties haven't come to the fruition point where they expire. Now, you'll notice two things when you're looking at these leasehold condominiums. Well, this is actually single-family homes that are condominiumized, which is a bit of a different thing. And they do have, in addition to their normal maintenance fee for the neighborhood, and I don't know if you've seen Aleloa, it's like old Hawaii. You got these smaller homes, on this little oceanfront community that are about anywhere from 1,000 square feet to 1,500 square feet. They are 2 bedrooms, 3 and 4 sometimes, and it's just so cute. This private little pool, oceanside. I'm a big fan.
Where is that?
It's on the west side, Aleloa. It's you go along the lower Ho'opi'ilani Highway, and there's a little neighborhood that's like tucked away behind there. It's gated, and it's funny because it's actually grandfathered in vacation rentable on a 1 month basis. So you could, if you rented it once a week,
wow,
you can't use it for the rest of the time that's out there, but at least you can pay for it the time that you're not there. But you do have additional fees. So in addition to that normal maintenance fee of like about $3,000 a month for the very prime oceanfront ones, there's that lease payment, and that varies depending on where you are in the complex. If you're in a more prime position, you're going to pay more. Like if you're in the very front, you're going to pay something like $6,700 a quarter. Not a month, but $6,700 a quarter. But compared to other oceanfront property, that's pennies. I mean, you're putting that in, and the landowner is really getting the interest. Now, they made the decision when the reversionary clause came, where, say, for example, they could take the land away and use it for themselves. It would be a considerable battle, and normally there's no financial incentive to do it, because once they get this land back, what are they going to do with it? They're going to meet current setback standards. They're not going to be able to build where the current homes are. They're not going to get the full value out of it. The density is going to be less. So typically, people, when the reversionary period that own these lease agreements are going to say, no, I don't want to deal with it. And that's every case I've seen, they've renegotiated, but there has been very, very few of them. We're coming up to a precipice where they're seeing more and more of it. And you want to apply for financing, they're only going to finance, usually less than 5 years than that amount. So this one expires in 2059, has a renegotiation date this year. So you would easily be able to get a 30-year lease on that, or a 30-year mortgage on the property. Now, there's other places like Napili Point, which is very different. It's called a sandwich lease, where there's only a small portion that's actually leasehold. I've even seen them advertised as fee simple, where even though they have this lease element to it. So that's only a small chunk of the land that has that lease payment, and it's $7 a month that they're paying. So, I mean, it's so inconsequential that, it's not normally a consideration, and people will often completely avoid looking at leasehold properties because they are concerned about this reversionary clause. There is one that has a ways of going. It's expiring in 2035. So, for example, you would only have about 10 years worth of a mortgage that you could get on that one. That is Kamaole Nalu. Kamaole Nalu, their lease is an additional $700 a month, but you're going to be able to purchase a 2-bedroom, 2-bath, 774 square foot for like $500,000. If you look at anything else, it's going to be $1 million.
Wow, that's an interesting one. So people should contact you
if they're
on these
looking,
properties.
Yeah, absolutely. And of course, to get educated, it does depend on where you're purchasing. One of my favorite ones is Kahana Village. Kahana Village is a long expiry date of 2065, and their monthly lease payment is only $544 per month. So that's a really good example. My favorite out of everything is Sands of Kahana, but there's nothing available there. They were selling 2-bedroom, 2-bath, vacation rentable, 1,580 square foot units for $799,000 or $800. It ended up selling for $760. I was blown away it took that long. So there's definitely opportunities out there. It's every place is different. Normally they look at the lease and you have to examine the language of that. Most people are expecting a 7% return for their land. So when that renegotiation comes, they're going, oh, okay, how much is the land worth? We're going to get 3 appraisals of the property. We're going to average it out, or we're going to pick our favorite one, and then that's going to be the renegotiation period for the next 10 years. And that's mostly what I see with leasehold properties on Hawaii. But every individual complex is different. Sometimes there's a fee element associated in a different type of sandwich lease, like Maui Eldorado, and that's going to be there and prevent that reversionary period, even though most people are not going to want to do it. But you're definitely going to have to examine every example. Like, Kamaole Nalu, it makes no sense to take that building down, because if you're going to demolish something that's on the ocean, you're not going to be able to build the same amount that you had initially. So I would doubt that that property, but there's no guarantees, of course.
Well, I always learn so much from the show. People can go to MauiRealEstate.net, and they can call you even.
Absolutely. My number is 808-280-2764. That's 808-280-2764, or our website, MauiRealEstate.net. Thank you so much. This is Clint Hanson with Maui Real Estate Radio, the Hanson Ohana, and we look forward to seeing you next time.